Welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axion.
I'm Scint.
And we are continuing our way through Pokemon Christmas and our discussion of Terry Pratchett's Hogfather.
So, we've talked quite a bit about just how important belief is in the cosmology of the Discworld, and according to Death, just important to humanity itself, as in, without the ability to believe in things, humanity would not be itself human. So that segues into another question. What does it mean to be human?
That's what I was afraid was going to happen.
It's a fairly loaded question, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's several ways that could be answered, and that's even just deliberately ignoring the obvious answer of, well, to be human is a person who is human, physically and genetically and all that fun stuff. But obviously that's not what Pratchett was going for in this context. Especially in a world like Discworld, not Discord, a world like Discworld, where there are a vast myriad of different creatures. There are humans, there are dwarves, there are trolls, there are
corporal knobs.
There are vampires, there are werewolves, there are on and on and on and on and on. So, these are obviously not the question that Pratchett is asking here. He is more asking what it means to have humanity.
Or perhaps a better way to put this might be, what does it mean to be a person?
And this is a bigger question than it might first appear to be. Because what it means to be a person and the qualifiers of being a person are things that have changed and been applied differently throughout the history of civilization, and generally not in a good way.
Which, interestingly, could segue into like an etymological sidetrack, if you don't mind.
Have at it. So,
female and male, as words, have actually nothing to do with each other. It's often said that, like, well, obviously you put the FE in front and you get da-da-da-da-da. And it's basically the same thing with woman and man as well. They have different etymological roots. Female comes from Latin femella, or femina, meaning woman. Male, however, does not mean male in Latin. For that would be man in Latin would be vir, or wir if you're pronouncing it with the soft V that I was taught in high school. So that's where you get virile from.
That's also where you get. That's also where I believe that also extrapolates into there in Germanic tongues, in related branches off from the earlier proto.
You're getting ahead of me.
Okay.
Yeah. So male comes from Old French. I'm trying to figure out how to pronounce this because I do not know Old French. It's Masle, and I don't remember if the S is pronounced. I don't know modern French, let alone Old French. That comes from masculus, which meant male human, as in we'd separated out female and male humans, each have their own word. So it wasn't just, it's human, so it has man in it, so it means a man. Like, it's often misunderstood today. So, fee is not a prefix. It's part of the original root. So, yeah, that's a common misunderstanding from centuries of misuse. So, as you were saying, you're thinking of where and with.
Yes. Which, those are Germanic
Old
roots.
English. Yep. Yeah,
well,
Germanic
they
roots.
came from Germanic and then got moved into Old English, yes.
Yeah, so my source that I have found on this, and I found this backed up in more places than I have not, so where meant man, and you know this from werewolf, so...
Yep, and as always, we will be linking our sources in the description.
Yeah. Man just meant human, person. So, where man meant human, male, and with men was a female person. So, there you go.
And you can see very easily how Withman became woman. That's a fairly obvious etymological descent.
Yep, but because we have ignored centuries of translation error, because, well, we're trying to simplify very disparate roots. We have Latin, we have Old French, we have Old English, and those do not always play nice together. It's gotten oversimplified to the point where people do not remember these origins and just go with the simplest and, in this case, incorrect answer. And I have seen far too many people on the internet try to use this mistranslation as an excuse to say, if it's referring to all men, it's referring to just men and not women, so it's not all people are created equal, blah, 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 blah. Even though that's not what the root used to be. So, yeah. Rights have to, on the other hand, I kind of want to disagree and say that what is defined as a person that's changed sometimes can be for the better.
Oh, absolutely.
For example, slavery is not legal. It used to be. And they counted as 3/5 of a person, and I don't really want to get into how stupid an idea that was at all, because we have a book to talk about and I will never shut up.
Needless to say, we will probably be commenting on that in future stories, however, because it is a thing that is going to come up a lot.
Let's just say that there's a lot of ulterior motive behind the 3/5 compromise, and it doesn't have anything to do with Hogfather, so I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole if I can avoid it right now. But, yeah. How do we want to define a person as it seems to appear in Hogfather? Because, well, we have a couple of characters who, probably would not be considered people by most.
Oh, this puzzle is actually harder than it was in the original game.
Push it down one more.
Oh, I see what you did. Thank you.
Yep. Admittedly, I don't like being on my bike for these because I'm afraid I'll push too hard and cycle right through it and screw the puzzle up. But yeah, for example, Death. Death is not human. Death knows Death is not human. But Death also has the capacity for sapience and free will and wants to be more like humanity. So, is Death a person?
I believe Death refers to himself as an anthropomorphic personification.
Yes, he does. But does he act like a person? He seems to have more control over forming his own opinion than many people I have met. He thinks for himself, he steps out of line when it is convenient for him to do so. So while he does personify Death, there is more to the character of Death than just collecting the departed.
Yep. And we see this very, very clearly in a lot of his later books, but it really starts out becoming a thing in Reaper Man, if I remember correctly, is really the book that's focused on death as a person.
Yeah, which I don't know if we'll get to Reaper Man one day just because there are so many other books we want to do. Short version of that is the auditors decide Death is not doing a very good job as Death and fire him, so he becomes human for a time. And he really likes being human. So that's why we have what confuses the heck out of Susan in Death's house, where he has all these things that are an imitation of humanity. Like, there's cats here. There's an umbrella stand. It never rains in Death's domain, but there's an umbrella stand because Death has seen it in human households, so therefore he needs it. Death trying to be more liked by people. It's why he wants to be the Hogfather that night so much. Besides, keeping the Hogfather alive through maintaining belief. But, yeah. And on that note, Susan is not fully mortal. Because Discworld is weird, she has inherited Death's powers. She's technically not human. Does she count as a person? She's mostly human.
What about the characters that are clearly not human at all? Like Quoth the Raven, or
the Death of Rats. Or the Oh God of Hangovers, who was literally not in existence before the events of the book.
And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, we have all of the characters like who are dwarves or trolls or whatever else.
But they are generally considered to be people as far as the narrative treats them.
Yeah.
Like, they're just, they live in Ankh-Morpork like everybody else. They get into bar fights at the Mended Drum, formerly the Broken Drum. You can't beat it. I love Discworld. Have I mentioned that? Like, I don't remember which book it's in, but Pratchett mentions that, like, racism isn't as much of a thing in Discworld because they go for speciesism instead. Black and white gang up against green. So, yeah. You can still be a person. You don't have to be necessarily human. Humanity, I think, is often replaced, with the idea of mortality, and I don't mean that in the sense of ability and capacity to die, so much as they are mortal races, and it seems a little more inclusive than saying humankind, and dwarf kind, and gnome kind, and troll kind.
And a lot less, wordy.
Yeah. I'm not sure how well etc. kind would go over.
It'd be nice if I could find another Dawnstone.
Because this also tends to come up with the idea about humanity versus monsters, which I don't think was necessarily the focus of Hogfather, because so much of it seemed to be focused on the power of belief that makes humans able to be human, but it definitely showed up. Like Susan's poker.
Yep.
She took kids and only kills monsters. So, it did nothing to hurt Death, who was just a silly skeleton sitting in a chair eating a cookie. But they could tell that there was something very wrong with Mr. Tea Time, and the poker did a number on Mr. Tea Time. But we also know that Discworld itself seems to have another metric for humanity, which seems to just be the capacity for change. And we know this because of the Auditors of Reality. Their job is to audit reality, to quantify everything. And because humanity is just a mass of chaos ever-changing, humanity means they can never actually get their job done. So they hate humanity with a burning passion.
Yep. Humanity is messy. and messy is difficult. There is actually a few other books where the auditors make appearances. We mentioned Reaper Man. There's another one, I can't remember.
Thief of Time, it's another Susan book.
Ah. And I believe in that one of the auditors temporarily becomes human and basically almost instantly stops being able to properly be an auditor.
Yep, they have one of their number go undercover to get something done that they need a person for, and quickly decides they like being able to sense things and end up turning on the other auditors. Which can kind of say that humanity is contagious. Once you get a taste of it, you don't go back. You want it. You want to stay human.
Which we
That's
saw
certainly
with
true
Death.
for Death. Yeah.
But Death
It's also
is
true for Susan. Like, Susan desperately wants to not be weird. She has to keep reminding herself not to do weird things that she's inherited from Death. Like the voice or walking through walls, and normal people don't have to worry about that sort of thing.
You know who else became a little too human and didn't want to go back? Hex.
Yep. The computer.
Hex got a taste of being human, quote-unquote, being a person, and started developing personality. It had a conversation with Ridcully that was more talking to a person than just getting feedback from a machine. It caught senility from the Bursar, and at the end of the story, it had its Hogfather gift that it didn't want taken away. And when speaking with Death, it had wants and desires. It had an entire Christmas list for him.
I do like that Ridcully basically figured out use the placebo effect on the computer and when nobody else did, just because it was such a stupid idea. Like, just tell his head take some dried frog pills. How's that going to work? Type in dried frog pills. Much better. See? That could also be like Power of Belief that we missed.
Yeah, but I mean, it builds under the same scenario. Yes, it's about quote-unquote tricking Hex into believing that it's been affected by this thing, but it's also treating Hex like a person. A person has this problem, this is how you treat it. Obviously, you do have to make... You don't literally feed pills to the computer, you just type it in the program entry. But the basic idea is still treat it like you would a person. And with that expectation comes also the expectation of a certain amount of respect. Because Hex is being treated like his own individual entity, the Death as the Hogfather is like, well, it's its own person. Every person gets to participate in Hogswatch. Therefore, Hex should be able to participate in Hogwatch, and if it has a list, I can take its requests.
Another point raised here at the university would be the librarian. A human wizard who, through unexplained circumstances, accidentally turned into an orangutan. No one has changed him back yet. I don't remember that's because he doesn't want to be changed back or no one's tried.
It is that he doesn't want to be. He has resisted all attempts.
But yes, so technically not a human, was a human once, so still counts.
And very
Turns out
much
to live
a
every year.
person. Very much a person with his own wants and needs and opinions. Don't call him a monkey. That was a mistake.
So, yeah, a person should, I think, for the purposes of the story, just be viewed as not necessarily squirrely, but for the purposes of, well, everything. An entity who is able to independently articulate their own wants, needs, and desires and enact the agency wherewithal to achieve those ends.
So in having those desires and needs and ability to express them leads to the inevitable result of what happens when those needs are not met. That's where you get wants and desires and, to some extent, the willingness to take action to acquire or achieve whatever one desires. And this is a big part of Death's entire point of humans need fantasy and belief to be human. They need the ability to perceive that they are lacking in something that is intangible but nevertheless vital to being human, and that they do not currently possess, and the ability to desire to acquire it.
Yeah, I'm honestly not really sure what else to add here.
Well, I think the only thing really to add is to extrapolate on that the necessity of that level of ability to have desires and to pursue them is exactly what, as stated earlier, the Arbiters have such trouble with. It is that ability to have desires and to wish to act to achieve them that leads to humans changing. Because humans can be, and, well, because people, I really should say people and not humans, but Death's quote got me scrambled up. People can recognize that they are in an untenable or unsatisfactory situation and seek to rectify it, which results in a change in their status. And that change is the bedrock of the problem that the Arbiters have with humanity. They don't like that people won't stay where they start and keep doing what they're doing in an orderly fashion, because people recognize that they want things that aren't being obtained or given to them as a result of that specific desire. And Death points this out in his closing monologue, where the falling angel meets the rising ape is where humanity resides. They have the recognition of something better, and they have the recognition that there is more to life than mere survival. And that messes with the Arbiter's system. So, without this ability, not only would obviously people not be people in the way that we recognize them to be, but they also wouldn't be a problem for the Arbiters. That the story is entirely built on them being that the Arbiters are wanting to solve that begins the instigating incident. And the Hogfather is but one of many entities and reflections of humanity that the Arbiters consider a problem. And like we said earlier, when mentioning in Reaperman, they had a problem with death being too human. All of these other deities, and entities rather, are based completely on human perception of things. Oh, hi, Team Rocket. So, all of these things derive from humanity's perception of them. Why would they not be a bit human themselves? What it basically comes down to is that the Arbiters are... What the Arbiters want is essentially impossible in a reality that has free will, and that has any beings that are able to self-actualize. What the Arbiters want are drones, robots, things like that, and that's not the reality that they've been given.
Like, the Auditors don't really care about humanity. They just want to be able... Yeah. It's the Arbiters, yeah, Auditors. They just want to be able to count things. It's, like... I'm trying to find a good way to put this. If you're familiar with the Unraveled series, when our host, BDG, is looking at the OSHA violations and Smash Brothers phases, like, look, you have death flying in here, and you don't have any secured ladders or anything. I don't care about death, but I need to see your paperwork on these railings. It's not what humanity is doing, it's the infrastructure is impossible to manage, and that is our job. It is the epitome of blue and orange morality. They do not work on the same level as living things. They will never understand humanity, and because of that, they will forever be humanity's nemesis, because the existence of humanity itself is a permanent thorn in their side.
Yep, especially in Discworld, where, as we discussed before, reality conforms to belief.
And that's why they wanted to get rid of the Hogfather, to get rid of that excess belief.
Yep. Unfortunately, it didn't work, and you instead... Well, bye, Albert. You instead ended up with a surplus of belief, and because humans don't just stop believing because the one thing that they believed in is gone now...
That's because they listen to a lot of Journey.
I knew you were gonna do that. that belief had to go somewhere. It didn't just fall off into the aether. It started coalescing around new foci. And that's kind of the problem, is that they were trying to alter the state of the world without changing the fundamental function that made the world work the way it does. They can't get what they want out of this reality because the reality itself is antithetical to their desire. Discworld is built on the function of giving form to belief. And trying to suborn belief by destroying the thing that it's invested into just made more belief available for use. And instead of just dissipating and leaving the total amount of believed in entities reduced, it dissipated into a bunch of extra lesser entities. They didn't have the concentrated, coalesced belief and recognition and power of the Hogfather, but they took up as much psychological space. And the same amount of invested belief was still in play. And it's made very clear, at least to me in the story, that they did not understand that this was how things would work because they don't understand people.
Well, actually, this wasn't even their, full plan, I think. Because remember, they didn't know how Tea Time was going to go about this.
Right.
And think about this. Now that they saw how Tea Time was doing it, which was to use the Tooth Fairy's domain to do the old magic and make sure no one had ever believed in the Hogfather, they could have done that for basically everything. Yep. Eventually, they could have won, but it would have taken a while, a lot of trial and error, but they had time for that, until Susan and Death got involved.
But even then, looking at that, could they really have succeeded? Because, yes, they could have one by one made people disbelieve in all the things, but as we saw with the Hogfather, that didn't stop belief. That just created a surplus of belief for people to believe in new things. They would have had to sit there and keep using the old magic and never get interrupted to make people disbelieve in every new thing that came along. You get rid of the Hogfather, and suddenly now you have the Cheerfulness Fairy, and the Veruca Gnome, and the Oh God of Hangovers. Well, now you have 3 things to tell people to disbelieve in instead of just one.
But they're smaller things that would have less impact on common belief, so...
Right,
I don't know. I'm not an auditor. I don't know what their endgame was. We saw what they were trying, and it didn't work.
Right, well, that's kind of the question that I'm going for, is would this have actually worked? And I'm not sure it would have, even in the long term. But that's an extrapolation that could technically go on forever. But yeah, I think we have thoroughly gone through this one. I can't really think of much more to add to that without going down a really deep rabbit hole on the auditors themselves. What about you?
I don't know.
I'm more meant, do you have anything further to add?
No, not really. I've been out of steam for a while.
Alright. In that case, we will end this one here, and see you all next time. Or at least, I hope we will finish this one here. Yep, there we go. Alright, see y'all next time.